And we are recording with Robert Malone and Dr. Mikki Willis on Thursday, October 5th, 2023 at 3:06 p.m. Eastern time. I don't need to introduce y'all. I think everyone knows who you are. So going over your film again, Mikki, just to jump into it, or excuse me, Doctor, Plandemic 3. So I was trying to formulate, I meditate before every show, and I was trying to formulate how to kick this off. And for everybody listening, the link to the movie is in the description. The link to Dr. Malone's Twitter and his Substack are also in the description. As of a week ago, I am banned from Twitter, so I am not in there.
So sorry.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care. Twitter, iTunes, Reddit, YouTube. It's whatever. Really, if I could boil it down, is it comes down to the debate of, is this yet again the end of history? And it made me think of the quote by Lord Kelvin of, there's nothing in 1900, there's nothing new to be discovered in physics. All that remains is more and more precise measurement, which is obviously bullshit. We look at Woodrow Wilson. I'm reading a book on him right now, saying that as we're going into World War One, this will not end. This will drag on for a minimum of 3 centuries, maybe 4 or 5. We look at Eisenhower. We look at Truman in 1950, Korea invading, I guess, South Korea. This is turning into World War III. We look at, the global war on terror. This will never end. Time and time again, it looks as if it's the end of history. And I talked about this yesterday with some friends. It's also very egocentric. I'm at the end. I know there's been World War One or World War II, but Tommy Carrigan, this is it. You're on the front line. It's very convenient for our own narrative that this is the end. So as not to come at it from the same angles that it has been tackled, it's biowarfare. This one's different because it has AI and social control and 15-minute cities and Klaus Schwab's an evil villain. Are we actually at the end? Or is this just another iteration of measure, countermeasure, and on a more philosophical level, is this just, are we like the moon and the earth pulling on each other and keeping their cores active? Is this just an eternal battle we're at? And because it's your film, Dr. Willis, could you maybe comment on that?
I think we're always at the end of something. I think that's just a process of life. And, this is the apocalypse in that it is the lifting of the veil, the revealing of truth and what's really going on. But this idea that we're always at the end times, in my life, I've already lived through 4 or 5 end of the worlds. And so the thing that we make the mistake with most commonly is that we judge our present moment from the past. And so I'll tell you a quick little story. I've shared this on one of the podcasts. I hope it's not this one, although that would have been a year ago, so people have forgotten me by now, I'm sure. In 2008, I saw a black and white vintage IBM ad, and it was an illustration of a woman in a home motioning towards an open doorway. And beyond that doorway was a floor-to-ceiling, wall-to-wall, massive computer system, one that you might see in a NASA facility. And it was a warning to homeowners that they one day would be inventing something called the personal computer, which was unthinkable at that moment, that we'd have computers in our home. But it was a warning to homeowners that they must prepare and add on a master-sized bedroom to house these personal computers. And it made perfect sense to the biggest brains in computer technology at the moment that if you wanted something to actually be usable, it would have to be that size, because everything of that era, every engine, everything got much larger as it became powerful enough to be useful. They didn't know that technology would be shifting in such a way that things would get smaller as it became more powerful, that we'd have terabytes of power on the head of a needle. There was nothing to indicate back then that would be the trend. It would be reversed. And we'd have nanotechnology. And so I think it's dangerous for us sometimes to always tell people, well, it depends on where you're looking from. If you're looking from the past and you're analyzing this moment, no wonder history continues to repeat itself. But if we take a look at our history and understand that we have invented so many things that make today much different than they were in the past. What Mao Zedong did in the 60s to capture over 1 billion citizens into a structure that lives today as communism, rolled over by the Communist Party of China, probably wouldn't have been possible had those citizens, those billion very wise and disciplined Chinese citizens, had the ability to communicate with each other. But the fact that they had 1, 2, maybe 3 state-sponsored media channels with no internet, no ability to get messages to each other except for, in the quiet of night, in the dark shadows of their own homes, where they still weren't safe because there were always spies and people hired to rat them out. There was very little communication that would save them and inform them of what was coming. But as we've all seen today, we have ways to alert each other, to share information, which is one of the many reasons we have to fight like tooth and nail to preserve our freedoms through the digital technologies that we've created that allow us to communicate with each other worldwide. So there is absolutely the end of something happening. There's perhaps the death of who we thought we were, the death of slavery, the death of indentured servitude to the state. But we have some work to do before that's going to be realized. And it's some serious work, and it's some hard work, and things will get worse between now and then. I'm certain of that. I think we're all certain of that. But what I see, because of the inventions and innovations that we have brought to the forefront that allow us to communicate, is this one's going to be much different and ultimately lead in our favor.
Dr. Malone.
Well, that was profound. I think I'm going to have to go have a shot of rye right now to recover from that. Are we at end times? There's certainly a lot of the members of communities of faith that I encounter routinely these days that are convinced that's the case, and convinced that much of this has been prophesized, convinced that we are living through a colossal battle of good and evil that they frame in the context of the end times and the great battle between heaven and hell, Lucifer and God. I think that one of the things that contributes to the sense of existential crisis, which is really what you're talking about, existential crisis being a crisis of belief that you are going to die, civilization is going to die, the world as you know it is going to die. All of these things can be bundled as existential crisis experience. Is that we have had very active weaponization of a series of ostensible existential crises. The COVID crisis was framed as a mass casualty event. With a 3.4% case fatality rate, we should expect the hospitals to be full. We should expect people dying on the streets. We should expect mass graves. We should expect the need for National Guard and the military to maintain social order. And the government might as well get to it and get those things going now, because they're going to need them later. And by the government, of course, I'm referring to many of the Western governments, certainly Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Austria, Germany is a strong case can be made. Less overtly physical authoritarianism in the UK, but certainly profound weaponization of modern psychology against the populace. And then, interspersed with another existential crisis involving infectious disease that was the kindest word would be war game modeled almost precisely a year before, that being monkeypox. If Mikki now wants to do Plandemic 8, he could go over the monkeypox outbreak and have a good time with that. And then we have the existential crisis of climate change, which obviously is going to be an earth-ending event, and we will all be extinct unless we take the measures that I'll just say it, the overlords, the World Economic Forum, all the way up through the food chain of the Bank of International Settlements, et cetera, unless we get on board with their prescriptions for how we avoid the outcome of mass die-off, which paradoxically exists in resonance in some way. You're talking about resonance a moment ago, with the agenda of the need to control and reduce world population to, depending on who you're talking to, is it 350 million?
500.
Or the document from that is current U.S. policy, known as the Kissinger Report, that capped global population as U.S. policy at 8 billion. So it's somewhere between there, and so that's the paradox, is they're telling us we're all going to die from climate change, but then there are those that are saying that's a good thing, but they're not saying it publicly. So we're all being bombarded with these rotating messages of existential crisis pretty much all the time. It's great. It sells CNN slots. It sells advertising. It sells newspapers. It elects politicians. It justifies bizarre economic policies. It supports Agenda 2030. It supports this trade union of the 100 largest companies in the world, or is it 1,000, called the World Economic Forum, and their interests. It supports the interests of BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. It's weaponized against us in a constant stream of fear that has created a populace that, I'm going to say those words that are prohibited now. I've been so ridiculed for talking about it. Mass formation. The work of Matthias Desmet, which is really just a 21st century update of the work of Hannah Arendt and Yus Malur, and all the way back to Sigmund Freud, and before that, all the way back to Plato and the cave. So we have this weaponization of fear and crisis coming at us almost continuously, because, hey, it's good business. And it's no wonder that the general populace is reeling from this. I mean, if I was Tinkerbell and I could just wave my little wand, don't go too far with that metaphor, please.
I was about to say, I think you're cuter than Tinkerbell.
Oh, you're so kind. And I just got my haircut yesterday. So my one wish right now would be they would just stop with the fear. Just let us alone. Let us live our lives. Don't bombard us with fear all the time. Think about how pleasant life would be if you weren't being constantly bombarded with fear messages. So it seems to me that this emergent consensus, or if not consensus, strong plurality of belief in end times and impending catastrophe is the logical product of the behavior and messaging that we've been subjected to, and this incredible power of modern propaganda. The literally, and I've run this to ground. The current Secretary of Defense signed off in 2010 when he was at Fort Bragg on the PSYOPs or PSYWAR manual for the Department of Defense, which says outright that the DoD can deploy their cyber capabilities that they've built for offshore combat against domestic populations in the event of a national crisis, which this is. And we know that it's been deployed by the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, and it certainly appears that it's been deployed by the United States. So we have all of, and then we have the reveals from Missouri versus Biden, the Twitter files, the Facebook files. We know that our government has weaponized incredibly powerful algorithmic technology against the citizenry, against its own citizens, under the belief system that any discussion or debate that is contrary to the approved narrative must be stopped, that we should only be allowed to think that which the government allows us to think. And this is the existential crisis that I think is real. And let me just back up and give you context. I was broadcasting to Great Britain News with Neil Oliver, who's a personal hero, and what a warrior he is. So eloquent with that brogue that he's got. But in the BBC now, on GB News and other stations, GB News now is scared silly because one of its broadcasters got run out by the censorship board that the British government imposes on all broadcasters. And so then when that happened, the whole bunch of them just got afraid of their own shadows. And so now what they do is, if you go on a broadcast and you're going to talk about a controversial subject, like say COVID, and the government's response to COVID, then they will have somebody basically representing the official narrative on the show at the same time, and there has to be a counterpoint. So back and forth, I say tomato, he says tomato, and we go back and forth. And in this case, I started talking about the censorship and propaganda and fifth-gen warfare being deployed, and the nudge technology, and the 77th Brigade in the UK. And the counterpoint was, well, here in Britain, what we have is elections. And after an election, the government operates for, a period of time, 4 years, let's say, representing the people. And it acquires, by virtue of the election, the authority of the people to govern. And therefore, the government can do whatever it wants. Basically, it doesn't have to go back and monitor what the will of the people is. It's the government's right to act in whatever way it wants. And it hit me, this is another one of those bricks to the head moment, that if such a government decides that it's acceptable to deploy these advanced cyber technologies, fifth-gen warfare, on their own populace, which are designed and now powered with modern media to control everything that you think, see, believe, encounter, feel, manipulate them if you interact with social media at all, or corporate media. If that happens, the next election becomes moot. You no longer have free agency. You no longer have sovereignty. These technologies are specifically like neurolinguistic programming. They're specifically designed to control what you think, believe, and feel. So after 4 years of having a free hand to deploy these technologies, the idea of individuals participating in some sort of a democratic process to objectively evaluate government policies and options and outcomes and make an informed decision is completely irrelevant. It's gone. And that's the end time that I'm most concerned about, because we seem to be just galloping towards that. That's the existential crisis, is the loss of the ability to think. The killing of the mind, as Malone spoke of, is just on steroids right now. And we all know it and feel it. Anybody that read Brave New World in 1984, An Animal Farm, etc., gets it. If they have, half a brain and a conscience. And so we've been warned about this. for years and years and years. And here it is, a near and present danger. And the danger is those that control media information, all channels of data and information, and mine everything that we do to weaponize it against ourselves. That's the one that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about Russian hypersonic nuclear tipped missiles hitting Northern Virginia. I'm worried about the loss of the ability to think and process and access actual accurate information by the general populace, and the impact of that on the electoral process, which we've all placed our faith in as the cornerstone of our representative democracy, or whatever you want to call it.
Loss of the ability, or loss of the necessity, as as the warrior poet, and by that I mean the fat comedian Tim Dillon says, to look through the lens of liberalism or conservatism is simply the shirking of independent thought. You do not need to look, as some people might say, I'm a paranoid schizophrenic. I like to think that it's I'm an independent thinker, but I've been able to vote in 4 elections, and I've voted left, right, because my mind changes as I get older, as I would hope I get less dumb. But to look through the thing of, vote blue no matter who, or, vote red till you're dead, you're very simply just, I don't need to think. It's the Republican said it, or the Democrat said it. You're just dropping it. You don't need to think. It's just, it is what it is. It's, they're against Nazis, or they're against commies, and it's very convenient. I get it. I mean, I'm living in a city for the first time in my life. I have probably ordered more food in the last 6 months than I have in the previous 3 decades. Even if it's healthy food, it's like, well, I could go to the store and get some eggs, or just have it delivered. I don't have to do anything. So that's kind of what gets me, is the loss of necessity to do something, because we all should do things, but you don't. I work out every day. I have since 2003.
You're just enjoying life in a 15-minute city. There you go.
I am, and I love my overlords, and I do. So kind of twisting from that note, and we'll go back to Dr. Willis, is what you talked about was when people see the fat, pudgy, soft American sees the riots in the cities, and the only light at night is the flicker of the fires, and they won't want to approach the guerrilla armies. You're using this, not you, the communists are using this idea of you don't want to approach this thing that you're unaware of. And then when you look at, I don't know, Eisenhower and Patton from World War I, and Eisenhower didn't get to go. But these are guys that are familiar with war. As soon as World War I was over, they didn't come home and go, oh, the Great War is over. It's almost kind of funny how within months they were getting ready for the next World War. They didn't know when it was coming, but they were getting ready for the next one. And then when World War II ended, they were getting ready for the next one. And it's this idea of we're all terrified of the thing we don't know. But these masters look at it and go, this one's over for now, but it's going to keep coming, right? And then you go, well, how can we make that even more esoteric, even more niche? And it's medicine, right? That you have to have a special lawyer to get a malpractice suit, because it's so. If you are, I remember studying organic chemistry, and I'd help friends that were doing less well in it, and I would just think, like, if I was a bad person, I could fuck so many people with this, just like even just out of money for being a tutor, because I was doing very well in this class that no one else understood. So it's almost the logical end state of the idea of, fearing the guerrilla armies, fearing the war. How do you get, other than quantum physics, I can't imagine anything more esoteric than medicine. How else do you scare everyone of the unknown, including generals, including an Eisenhower or a Patton if they're alive today? And you come out and you go, oh, this COVID thing, this spike protein, you're not going to, you can't even imagine it. And you have a doctor that goes up, and other doctors, if they come out and point it out, they'll make it clear. But you look at a Fauci, I mean, you don't know what to do. You have the biggest, toughest guy, and they'll look at a doctor explaining some, rare cancer, and they'll be at their knees. One of my good friends is former Tier 1 Special Forces, and his wife's fighting cancer. You have this guy that has told me stories about looking at Noriega through crosshairs, and here he is, going like, I don't know what to do with this. So, Dr. Willis, is this simply a case of they're trying to use the most concentrated form of confusion of what is this? Again, you look at me, I fired a gun like 5 times in my life. I see a war coming, I'm like, it's fucked, we're over. You have Eisenhower, and he's just, kind of like, find your balls, let's move forward. Is this the natural end state of what they're going for? It's medicine. It's the modern high priest of, you can't understand this, like, you dumb pleb. Like, this is a virus. You have to submit. Is that simply what they're doing? And follow up, if that's the case, is there a silver lining? Because they're relying so much on you being confused, that's clearly not real power. They're going, you can't. How do you get a kid to behave? You're like, Santa's not going to bring you his presents, man. You're a kid. You're like, fuck, I'm not going to get the train. I don't know what to do.
Yes, absolutely. I want to start by saying there's a silver lining in everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, just think about the life that we've led already, even at your young age. You can, I will bet big money you can look back on some of the things that when you were going through them, they were the biggest tragedies of the moment of your life. And you can look back at those and realize what you learned, that in their own mysterious way, it was a blessing. The death of my brother and my mom within a month apart, I always say there's 2 greatest gifts my mom ever gave me was my life and her death. Dealing with the loss of my mother in my early 20s, my mom was my absolute best friend, my rock in life. Left me in a place of greater strength than I ever thought I could be in, because I had dealt with my greatest fear, which was losing my mom. And so there's, and then I was at the World Trade Center 9/11, picked up body parts for 3 days. And it was a massive spiritual awakening for me. One of the most horrific things that any human could experience, just outside of combat, but it was very similar. It was as horrific as you could imagine, to walk down the street and say, that's a hand, put it in the bag. Here's a crushed person under a car, let's pull them out. And, but that situation prepared me to do the work that I'm doing today. And so it's all preparation, and it's all absolutely meant to keep us in a state of cognitive dissonance, in a state of confusion, because we know what happens scientifically when we're not in a clear state of thinking, is we resort to the fight or flight, and the choices that we make are not from the full capacity of our highest intelligence. And so then we end up being more susceptible to following the leader, looking for somebody, please tell me where to go, what to do. And I'll whoever has the most charisma or is on my side or whatever it might be, I'm going to just go with where you tell me to go. And it's a very dangerous thing. That's what leads us into this thing called collectivism, which is also what leads us into what Robert Malone spoke about, mass formation. It's a real thing. It's mass hypnosis. Let's just call it what it is. It is mass hypnosis. It is when large groups of people succumb to the groupthink and override their own individual intelligence. But there's something also benevolent at the core of that. And that is our intrinsic desire to be connected, our intrinsic desire to lead a meaningful life, all rest within the cradle of collectivism. So our society has been set up in such a way that very few people are leading a fulfilling life. How many people do you know that are just doing their dream job and deeply in love with their spouse and in a powerful, wonderful relationship with their children? I would raise my hand too. But what brought me into this was also standing up for what I know is right. And everyone that I've met, like Robert Malone, who have made that very difficult decision to go against the grain and face all the discomfort and slander and pain, quite frankly, that comes with being an outcast of the unspoken globally chosen narrative. The other side of that is what has us both raise our hand to say our lives have become miracles in every single way. There's a force working within my life now that I can't articulate, and I think it's ineffable. I won't even try to articulate. All I know is that there's, I thought I knew what miracles were before, but something's happening in my life now that that I can't explain. All I know is when I stay true to myself, when I stay true to my word and to others, and I remove myself to a certain degree. I want to be careful that I'm not suggesting that we remove ourselves to the degree that it just brings us back into a state of collectivism, because there is that rule of when the oxygen mask falls, you put it on yourself. You can't help anyone until you've taken care of yourself. But at that point, when you're taken care of, how much of your daily actions can be as selfless as possible? There's always a selfish motivation. We want freedom for the world and for people because we want it for us and we want it for our children. There's always a selfish motivation. But my goal is always, how in every choice I get, what is the most generous and selfless choice that I can make? And what I've noticed is it's still a challenge at times. But when I make that highest choice, the result is a very flowing situation, a situation that just lines up, a movie that just all the right people end up in it. The funding comes, and it's just graceful. It's just graceful. No drama within the crew, no weird investors trying to start stuff. It's just drama free. But the moment that we get a little bit of that, hidden agenda of how do I glorify my own persona? How do I serve myself through this? It gets a little sticky and dangerous. And so I think that it's, I've just learned so much through this process. The last 3.5 years or so have been the greatest education of my life, of learning how to be with and deal with all of the different personalities and all of the different archetypes and the real sicknesses that we're dealing with, the real trouble that we're dealing with. And I'll frame that by saying that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on outside of us when we should spend more time figuring out what's going on inside of us. Because the problems in the world that we're all seeking to solve were activated by people that are wounded. I believe firmly that the Klaus Schwabs of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, the George Soroses of the world would have been very different men had they had, let's just pick one thing, maybe a better father, a better upbringing. If you know my children, it would be impossible for me to even consider that they would do anything harmful to another human being consciously because of the way they're being raised. And so there's a real interpersonal perspective that we need to start looking from more often and also, to be honest, to see it in ourselves, to say, is there a morsel of Bill Gates in me? Is there a morsel of an opportunist, of a monopolist, of a whatever it might be? Is there some of that? Or if I don't feel that there is it possible that it's a blind spot for me and it's still operating somewhere in my life? And this is why I've had upsets and breakups and divorces. And is there something going on there that I can take responsibility for and heal within myself, trusting that the ripple effect of that will probably have more impact on the rest of the world than me trying to correct things from the outside in. And so I do agree that there is a tactic being used to keep us all in a state of confusion. Because when the mind is clear, when the heart is clear, when and it's not just confusing data, but it's also, it's the busyness of the world. It's the distractions of the world. It's the addiction to filling all of our quiet moments with noise. It's when we have that free moment and we're in line at the DMV, instead of just being, we go, I got to scroll. Let me figure out what I can do here to pass the time. I'm in the bathroom now. Let me get caught up on and we're constantly doing that. What I've noticed to myself is that when I take a moment to get silent and to be still and just to do my best to not think, which is incredibly challenging for me, but to just breathe, answers to my life flow in. And those answers make so much more sense than the opinion of any guru that I might be tempted to follow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the hardest books I've ever read is Masters of Death, the SS Einsatzgruppen. They're the precursors to the death camps. They're the mobile death squads. It's a horrifying book to read. But one of it is one of the parts is it's talking about Hitler's upbringing. It's just kind of like a side chapter. And you're like, here, like, I remember like getting ready. It's like, the chapter is like, it's like young Adolf, and you're like, here we go. And part of you is like, I'm ready to hate this motherfucker. I just imagine like a 2-year-old with a mustache, like, and he comes in and it's talking about like him coming home from school, and his dad would beat him and his dog until they would both pass out from, I guess, like a temporary concussion, and he would wake up in a collective pool of urine, and Adolf wouldn't know if it was his or his dog's. And that would lead to his like love of animals. As he was gassing millions of Jews, he had forget the name of his dog, but this little dog he would take for walks. And you read that and you sit back and you feel guilty. You're like, am I feeling empathy for like the guy that, if you have a time machine, you go back and kill? And it's one of the most difficult things to grasp. You go, no, it's Adolf Hitler. I can't do that. And you go, I mean, you both raise your hand, and my mom and dad, the most loving people I could ever wrap my head around. And I go, I can't imagine. I can't even, I mean, like the Christmases I grew up with is like, I lived in like a Norman Rockwell painting. And then I look back at what happened to young Adolf, and does it excuse what he did? Absolutely not. But you look at it and you're like, dude, I don't know. How do you get through that? Like, how much of that is wounded? And then you start to look around at the people who are kind of wounding the world, and it's a tough pill to swallow, man. It's so much easier to look at an evil demon and go, yeah, that guy's just pure blackness. It's so much harder to look at an evil person and actually feel something for them. And that's madness. And I can't fully forgive them, because you're talking about losing your mom. Me and my 2 living brothers all look at the loss of our oldest brother in 2014, when I was 23 and he was 27, and he committed suicide. And like you said, about picking up body parts, I've held my brother's ashes. I've picked up the bag and, put it in the nice wooden box, and seen the fucking crushed up pieces of bone. And that breaks your mind. It really, you do dissociate. But I've said it. My younger brother said it. My older brother said it. It was the worst thing that ever happened. It was also the best thing that ever happened, because it's liberation. It's pure liberation. If you can get through it, granted, it's 7-8 years of unimaginable horror, but if you get through it, it's, I've been, Tommy, hey, I just got banned from Twitter last week. They're like, dude, you get banned from everything. I'm like, do you not understand how little I give a fuck? Like, it's Twitter. it means nothing to me. Sure. Yeah.
You brought up a couple of points that before we get too far away from them that I
You
would
go
like to add a little addendum here.
Yeah,
because,
I was going way off into the.
No, you were going. It's fantastic where you're going.
Thank you.
But before I forget, so our world has been inverted. Our reality has been inverted, right? Up is down, and down is up, and left is right, and right is left. And you said something earlier on when you first started to pose the question that reminded me, and that's why I thought of 9/11, was the things that have changed my life have often been the things that I went in the opposite direction of the herd. When everyone was running away from the collapsed World Trade Centers, I ran in for some reason. And that was the best choice I'd ever made in my life, because I think it really required, as a young man living in Hollywood who had built up that armor of ego to survive that very dangerous machinery of Hollywood that is just filled with predators. I had changed. I was no longer my mother's son. I didn't know that, of course, until later. It's amazing what you see when you wake up. And but what a great choice I made, even though it was questionable at the time. Did I make the right choice? Because a lot of people I was with either died or they're very sick right now from the air that we were breathing. But in my case, it was all positive, all wonderful, because I made the conscious choice to make it so. And I had an experience into 40 some hours into the experience when I literally found myself in that old fable of at the crossroads of my life with a choice. And the choice was, it was presented to me in the way that this could justify a life of irresponsibility. Like I could live off the government for the rest of my life. I could be a veteran in that sense, a veteran of 9/11 experience. And I could collect government money, and also, whatever my behavior was, I could use it as an excuse of, like, I just got messed up from that experience. I could use it to really, justify a life of irresponsibility.
Sure.
Or I could do what I'm doing now. And so sometimes, the people are confused out there. So this is back onto your initial question about the confusion. People are confused when it's actually the easiest time ever to find truth and the right path. It's never been easier. It was tricky before, but today, whatever the mainstream media is saying on loop, it's not the truth. It's super easy to find it. So do the opposite. If they're saying, be afraid, hate that person, maybe go in the other direction. You brought up something very interesting. If I got in a time machine, there's probably no one I'd rather get in a time machine and go back and strangle to death than Adolf Hitler. And yes, we can have compassion for that poor child that was beaten into a pool of his own urine as by his father. What a horrible situation that shaped the psyche of that man. And we should learn from that, but we won't learn from that through the energy of hate. We'll just hate. But the moment we apply it, we detach the man that committed some of the most horrific crimes against humanity ever to that innocent little boy that had to deal with the opened wound that his father was, that he was born into that experience. And it wasn't his choice on many levels, but it's that ability to give ourselves more credit for having the capacity to hold much more than we've been told that we can hold. We can hold that disgust and that condemnation of that man. And we can also hold compassion for understanding that he's also a cell within the organism of life, that we are just another cell in. And until we start looking at things higher like that, we'll keep repeating the Adolf Hitlers of the world. We'll keep producing them until the fathers realize, like, that's what this man produced. He produced a killer. And how many kids do we have on the street right now that were raised by the system, by the state, that their mothers were forced to not have a man in the house, and the kids were, the only security that they had, or camaraderie or tribe or connection that they longed for, was a gang. And that gang forced a child at 10 years old to go out and commit their first couple of murders so they could earn their street clout. And look at the damage that does to little guys. Look what's happening in the countries of Africa where they have child soldiers, and all these kids know they can walk right up to somebody, put a gun to their forehead, and pull the trigger and laugh. There's just, they've lost their humanity, completely lost their humanity. But that's the outcome of us not remembering that we have the capacity to love beyond measure, to be compassionate beyond measure, at the same time that we can completely condemn somebody for their actions. So we're much broader, we're much more diverse, we're much more resilient and brilliant than we've given ourselves credit for, and that's by design. Because when we look at humanity in a negative light, it's very easy to harm each other. It's very easy. It starts with, the appreciation of the self. If we think we're a failed experiment and a parasite on this planet, a cancer, whatever metaphor you want to use, if that's what we think humanity is, which is one of the most dominant narratives that have been circulating for generations, then that will to live. When I saw my mom literally die 34 days later after my brother, she was a cancer survivor and would have lived, I'm sure, into her 80s easily. She'd beat it. But the moment her son died and she held the grief of knowing that she was one of the ones who kept him on a deadly medicine prescribed by Anthony Fauci called AZT, the guilt of that was just too much. How many people are going through that right now? How many mothers took their kids out to get the COVID vaccine? I know a few here in Texas whose, kid was a track star, can't run anymore. He's 12 years old. The pain that mothers and fathers going through by making that choice. How many people are dealing with that? How many parents know that perhaps we're making a movie right now about the people that were injured by the trials, the COVID trials, and there's some of them are still in the wheelchair. Those parents, you can't have them on camera without them crying. We all know them. Robert and I know them. We've done many events with them. Some of their children died a day after the COVID vaccine. That person will never recover from that. And so it's, having compassion for that, to understand that's, we can rise above that, because the flip side of that, and I always do my best to, we need more than ever right now. We need to keep our energy, our vibrations up. And I will say this, that the upside to even those most horrific stories that we've heard through the last 3.5 years, is that what has happened is it has birthed a generation of warriors. And I would even call them love warriors. The parents who have harmed their children are unstoppable. They're now out on the front line. The mama bears, I did an event in Minnesota last week, and it was 90% mama bears at this event. And these are women who understand they're there to protect their children, and there's nothing that will stop them. And so that's the upside of all of this too. It's awakening the giant within all of us to understand that if we can't trust our leadership, if we can't trust our institutions, if we can't trust science, what the hell do we have? And hopefully that's when we return to understand that we were born here to be sovereign, and that we carry an intelligence. We are receivers and broadcasters of infinite intelligence. And if we tune into that, we'll start making much better choices that will lead us into a much better and brighter future.
And Dr. Willis has shared his thoughts on it, and we'll have Dr. Malone in a second. But as Dr. Carrigan, one thing, and talking to you, Mikki, you excuse me, Dr. Willis, one thing you've helped me with is you can look at a young Adolf and feel empathy. And it's also okay to look at an older person, an older Adolf, and no longer give that empathy. I just read last week, I had no idea. Dwight Eisenhower's dad. I think Dwight, he didn't refer to him as dad. He called him Old Savage, I think. Wow. He used to beat the shit. Yeah, he used to beat the shit out of him. And he goes on to become Dwight Eisenhower. And you're like, oh, okay, well, people are, okay, well, he and Hitler were born around the same time. I think 1890. You can go two routes. And, one thing that's kind of helped me is looking at this and going, there's a lot of pain. But there's also free will. And that doesn't mean don't love people. But it also, you can't simply grovel. And I'll always look back to, it was a couple of years after my brother died, and I was living at home with my parents. I was just angry, and I'm so upset. And I used to, I got into medical school. I had a hot girlfriend. And now I'm fat, and I'm living at home, and I'm a fucking loser. And everyone always felt bad for me. And I remember telling one of my friends who was an Iraq war veteran, I was like, yeah, man, I don't understand the point of going on. Like, what's the point of keeping on working? Like, maybe I should just like kill myself. And I remember he goes, well, sorry, but I've lost a lot of friends to suicide. And that's your choice. And I'm not going to let you bring me down. So best of luck. But at midnight, I'm going to block your number. I texted him back immediately and I go, his name's Miguel. I'm like, he might be watching. I was like, wait, what? And he was like, I'm sorry. And if you need me to call someone, I'll call someone. But it's like, I think you live with your parents. So, you can go talk to your mom. But you're not bringing me down. I've lost a lot of friends. And I was like,
go.
And a part of me was like, how,
good friend,
literally like Greta. I was like, how dare you? And he was like, you're not, dude, you're not doing this, man. He's like, I got 2 kids. I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to learn program. And I was like, I was so upset. I was like, I just told you how hurt I am. And he was like, stop being a pussy. And I was like, dude. And like, I think we ended up like talking that night. And I was like laughing. And he completely broke me out of it because he was like, we're not going down this road. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm legitimately sorry.
Tommy, you bring up another super important point that you just reminded me I didn't finish. I would love to hear Robert. We've had conversations similar to this about the will to live, and
sure.
And I'd love to hear his perspective on this and give him some mic time here. But you just reminded me that I didn't complete my sentence when I watched my mother lose her will to live. And we've all heard the stories of elderly people being with each other for 60 years. One dies, and a couple of weeks later, the other one dies.
My dad's parents. Yeah, less than a year apart.
And so it's important for us to understand all that madness out there is ultimately chipping away at our will to live. That's what's going on. As we lose touch with family, we lose touch with the attraction to male and female of we're too scared to have families anymore. We feel too unsafe to love our city. We feel it's risky to love our nation, to salute our flag, to be patriotic. So we start to lose everything worth living and dying for. And there goes our will to live. And that is, I explained to my sons the other day and baseball team that I coach, I said, you all play video games, and all those little avatar video games have that little bar at the bottom that shows your lifeline, your life force. And you're constantly watching that because when that runs out, it's game over.
Yeah.
And so that's the meter that we all need to pay attention to about our will to live. And oddly, the more extreme things get in the world, the more I'm finding my will to live is enhancing. It's getting stronger. Like I will fight harder for this because I love this life. I love my life. And most of all, I want my children to have a life that they love. And so that subject I've never heard anyone really go into, but that will to live is what is being deteriorated by all the negative news, by all the shock stuff, by all the, bad weather programs and all the stuff that's coming in. It's just to constantly chip away at our will to live. And I think that's why we all need to direct our attention, this thing we call our attention, which has been hijacked. And I know this as a 30-year plus media veteran that sat in boardrooms with ad agencies. And I realized early on as a young filmmaker, all they want to do is capture people's attention. It doesn't matter. You don't have to talk about the commercial, the product that you're selling. Just put girls in bikinis, eating juicy burgers, dripping down their breast. You've captured their attention. And now you own them as a consumer, right? So it's all about taking the wheel of that ship, which is our attention, so they can steer us wherever the heck they want us to go. But it's about regaining and becoming the masters of our attention again. And part of that is to counter all the stuff they're doing in this inverted world and move in the opposite direction. They want us to be scared, be courageous. They want you to be depressed, be happy. They want you to give up, get stronger. And that's how we counter all of it. And ultimately, when enough of us do that, then it's game over for them. I'd love to hear, Robert, I'd love to hear.
I was about to say I'm now realizing we've completely, it's like when a politician has some like celebrity come out and just stand next to him and then like give a thumbs up, and you're like, that what the fuck was the point of that? I just realized like I've just had Dr. Malone sitting here just patiently nodding. It's just like, this is my
he's a very good listener. I'd love to hear more of him too, because we used to speak all the time. We haven't spoken in quite a while. This is the first time we've seen each other in months, so it's actually good to see you, Robert.
Thanks, Mikki.
Dr. Malone, your thoughts on me and Mikki going back and forth?
I'm glad to hear you're doing so well, Mikki.
Thank you.
One thing as you're moving through this, I'm having various tangential thoughts. First, remember the saying, the meek shall inherit the earth. That my understanding is that term meek in the original Hebrew or whatever it was is improperly translated.
Right.
And it actually refers to someone who has this inner peace, and like Mikki is someone who literally does turn the other cheek, or metaphorically doesn't react to the aggression that might be coming their way. And aggression is a complicated thing, but metaphorically stands with their sword at the side, ready to go into battle if necessary. They don't seek conflict, they don't seek combat, but they are psychologically prepared for it should it be necessary. Another thought that came to mind as I was listening to you was, of course, my favorite saying from Frank Herbert: fear is the mind killer. This is from Dune, of course, and I guess that's a nod to the upcoming chapter that should be being broadcast into our brains shortly. But fear is the mind killer is something that's absolutely weaponized. That is what we've been experiencing, is the weaponization of fear in order to shut down our mind, destroy our mind and our ability to think and respond rationally. And what it does is it shuts down our thinking mind, our conscious mind, and then the lizard brain kicks in the absence of conscious logical thought. And we end up, or one is prone to these various things like the hyperaggression that we often see on social media, the complete failure of empathy, which is another key theme that was just coming out. The tension, I think, is to balance empathy with awareness that there are, in fact, sociopaths and psychopaths in the world. The difference being, I guess, with your story, that teaches that Hitler is actually a sociopath, not a psychopath, in that he was taught to be that way. Psychopaths being people who are classically incapable from birth of having empathy for others. It's really empathy that is what comes down to it. And our willingness to extend empathy to those around us, I think, is at the core of Mikki's approach to the world. When you hear him speak of resonance and being harmonious and taking personal responsibility rather than projecting to the other responsibility for whatever is taking place in your life, that's all coming from a deep position of empathy. I'm not aware of empathy coming naturally to people. It seems to often be the product of hardship. And I think this may be getting at what you're speaking of with the trauma, is, at least in my experience, when I have had to process various forms of trauma or aggression or other things and come to terms with them, come to terms with my own failures, what emerges from that organically is an enhanced empathy. But the counterpoint to that is that through my life, I've encountered that there are evil people in the world. There just are. And they often are narcissistic. They often are sociopathic or psychopathic. They are very focused on self and not on other. And my wife criticizes me all the time for this. I really have a hard time holding people accountable for things. I'm a horrible boss because basically I don't want to set any limits. I just expect people to do the right thing and be honest. And then I'm so disappointed when they aren't. And I fail because I don't give them clear expectations and directions. I just assume that they know how to behave and what to do. And then I become so disappointed when they fail to meet the expectations that I failed to share with them.
Oh yeah, no. Assume telepathy. Why didn't you know what I wanted?
Yeah, well, marriage teaches you about assumed telepathy on an almost daily basis. So after 44 years, I've pretty much got most of that ground out of me. But
fair enough.
The anger and hate within which we are swimming right now, I think is, for me, one of the biggest personal challenges. It still hurts. I still feel it deeply. And I was speaking to another colleague that I think we all know, Gavin DeBecker, who also, by the way, his creation as a human, and he's truly a human. He is a deeply human person, and a realized human. He also was subjected to intense familial trauma. His mother, shot his father. His mother was a heroin addict, used to beat him and his siblings. And he's told me a lot of personal stories, some of which he shared on other interviews, so I can speak about it. But Gavin is somebody who also shares that deep empathy, extends it to others, and the derivative for him, he's built a business out of it, an incredibly successful business, is that he's always going around trying to fix things for people. Make their lives better. He takes this as his personal mission, that he will protect others and make their lives better. I had a long chat with him and Jill, sitting on a eroded concrete bench on the Italian coast one day about all of this, and what it resulted in with his personality is that for a long time he was basically depersonalized. He could only imagine as a younger man, in his 20s and 30s, with a growingly successful business. When given the opportunity to make choice for himself, all he could imagine was what other people what would look good to other people, what other people would respect him to do. He was living his life through the lens of the expectations of others and not living it fully himself. I think that remains one of his personal challenges, is to allow himself to find happiness, to be the centered person that he can be, as opposed to continually seeking to please and serve others. And I think for me, my sense is that we're constantly caught in this balancing act, pulled between these different opposing forces and these different needs. And somehow we have to find an accommodation that represents us, that allows us to be centered, at peace, effective, but still in that biblical sense of meek, not aggressive or antagonistic, not seeking conflict, but able. This is the walk softly and carry a big stick version. Able to respond when we have to, because otherwise there are these predators out there that will take joy in causing us harm, or those around us. And for me, this is a major tension, is how to maintain an openness. This is, what came out of my part of the conversation with Gavin, is as we were sharing, and he coaches me about all kinds of things about my newfound position in the world and visibility. I personally am really, really wary of the cult of personality problems. That there are those who actively seek to develop a cult of personality around themselves. They seek fame. I fear it in part because of, and I'm highly cautious about it because I know how easily it distorts people. And your story about Hitler is a great example of a master of the cult of personality. And there are others that for whatever reason have a hunger for self-affirmation, external self-affirmation, and they fall into this need for developing a cult of personality around themselves. And Gavin was challenging me about this, saying, well, why do you reject this? You should use it. You should be enabling of a certain degree of this because you're serving a greater cause by enabling yourself to have this social status and platform. And my response was, and also, of course, that I should be less sensitive and less susceptible to the just ugly that streams into our lives if we're active politically or socially and active on these various platforms these days. And I said, I personally believe that if I was to give up and overcome the fact that these things still hurt me, I would cease being who I am. That being open and experiencing psychological pain and experiencing these forces and needs to avoid cults and the opportunity to serve as a cult leader makes me who I am. And if I was to lose the empathy that I have in these beliefs about personal modesty and not seeking attention and fame, many people think I'm otherwise, but that's Mikki probably knows me as well as anybody. I take great joy in the little goofy things like the filming that he did in a grocery store, which I think has yet to be broadcast, and this little clip about the most interesting doctor in the world, which is just a great barrel of laughs and fun. But I didn't do that for personal fame. And I, like I said, I think that to be who we are, we have to strike our own personal balance in this very complex space, particularly if we have a reasonably high profile. I'm not Bobby Kennedy by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have this little cohort that listens to what Jill and I put out on a regular basis and seems to find help and benefit in it. And for me, that's enough. I don't need to become the savior or the great one or the leader of the movement, wherever the movement is, but rather I seek to be a tutor and to share and to live a very human life in a very human environment. I think that's where I'm coming down on this, and it was just hit with those last two soliloquies from the two of you. I think it does come down to empathy, and I think empathy is paradoxically often a product of tragedy. And maybe that's the gift that you're talking about. Over.
Well said.
I was gonna say Yeah. Well, I say we wrap it up, but I kind of wanted to end on 2 points. Um, a more serious and a less serious. The first is Dr. Willis talking about the importance of being alone, being quiet. And I meditate every day. I have since 2008. I've lifted weights every day since 2003. And they are both identical in that you every morning you wake up and you go, I'm not doing it. Fuck that shit, dude. I'm not going to lift dumbbells. Then you go, let's go do it. And you go lift weights. You feel better after. You sit down and meditate. Meditation's scary because you sit down and you put the phone away. You're not scrolling through Instagram. You're not texting. You're not looking at whatever. It's just you. You're just sitting right here. Here I am on a rock in the middle of nowhere. What is all of this? Oh shit. My parents are getting older. I'm getting older. But as you sit quietly, more and more answers start to come to you for whatever it is that you're dealing with in life. And it's the most paradoxical thing because instead of working at something out, like reading a book and trying to find the answers, it's very, very odd. And I've talked about this before, and I'll make it short. When I was in college and I'd be taking an evolutionary biology class or organic chemistry, I would zip through 99% of the test. I would circle the 2-3 questions I didn't know. And at the very end, I would sit there and I'd put my pencil on the table and I would close my eyes and I would meditate. And I would sit there for 30 minutes. And eventually I'd open my eyes and I'd see the answer. And as I got more quiet, everything kind of went away. And my
because you're accessing your subconscious.
I swear because I would go through all of it. I would go through the entire class would be full. When I say like I got a 99 in OChem 1 and I got 100 in OChem 2. I'm the reason why I like several people at UGA like had taken that like another semester. Like I was they'd be like, I remember the professor would be like, class average was a 55, but he'd be like, somebody got a 99. So
that is a very significant intellectual achievement.
That
That's
was
a work at hard course.
And then I took pre-calculus 4 times, so it balances out. But the point is I would get more and more quiet. If you sat there and tried to go in your brain, what's the answer? How the fuck does benzene do this with? It's the exact opposite. You get very, very quiet.
Well, you remember the structure of the benzene ring emerged in a dream.
Oh, perfect.
Snakes chasing their tail.
Perfect. Backs up my point. Makes me sound smarter.
That's how it was solved. Hey, I wanted to say something though that kind of tees off.
Yeah, go for it. I don't care.
You and Mikki were saying about this need for peace and moments of inner peace. And it occurs to me, that's what the horses give me. We currently have a pen with 5 young foals, none of whom know anything. And I walk in there and they come to me, and horses aren't real big thinkers. They're very, very emotional. And you have to make yourself quiet if they're going to approach you and trust you, and you have to move really slow. And when they do that, when they come around and share with you and curiously nibble at you and interact with you, there's this transcendent peace. I think is similar to what the two of you are finding in other places. It's interesting that we all share that, that seeking for and realizing the value of that transcendent peace. So that's all I had to say.
No, you're putting down your calculator, and like my older brother, he can ask him anything and he can give you the answer at to 5 or 6 decimals. It's the craziest thing ever, and it's the exact opposite. You ask him how, and I think it's because he was hit in the head during football, but he'd say he just gets quiet and it just comes to him. And it's the exact, and there's a whole, philosophical, symbolic, metaphorical, whatever you want to call it, of all that. But I'd get quiet and you would just see it. And I do it during meditation. I'll sit there, be like, how do I grow the podcast? How do I and you go through all these cycles of thought. And as you get more quiet and you finally put it down, you go, I don't know. And then it comes to you, and it's because you've let go. So on one hand, with everything we're all working with, be it, the tyrannical takeover of a bio-Marxist, transhumanist, monstrous global dictatorship, or organic chemistry.
But Tom, this gets to this increasing wave of people having a sense of religious oneness or spiritual awareness that I think does seem to be happening. I believe Mikki would agree with that. I think he's intentionally, consciously tapped into it as well as subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do that, when you tap into that subconscious, are you really only accessing yourself, or is that the road through which the bridge or the gateway that we enter into the ability to tap into this mysterious, profound awareness that seems to surround us in a very mystical way, that unifies us, that connects us. One of Gavin's best friend is actually a former disciple of Carlos Castaneda, so that's an interesting thing to know. And the idea that this Yaqui sorcerer was teaching that there are essentially, we are glowing orbs connected to each other by metaphorical or real rays of light that we emit and that we connect to. There's something that is beyond the capabilities of, quote, science or scientism to detect. And so we discount it. We say it can't exist because we don't have the instruments to detect it. We don't know what wavelength it is. We don't know how it exists. And yet all three of us have this experience of when you quiet your conscious brain, you suddenly access things that are outside of what you thought you knew of your knowing, that often in some way resonate with others. Maybe this is what Mikki's talking about in his connectivity.
100%.
Yeah.
You are now over the target of what I feel is the shift in our awareness that has the greatest potential to save humanity.
Yes.
I was raised with zero religion. I don't think I'd ever seen a Bible until I was in my teens. My mom would say things like, God bless you and God love you and all of that, but there was no religion. We'd never gone to church. The only time I'd ever been in a church was for a wedding or a funeral. I watched my aunt and uncle become born-again Christians. I come from a fairly dysfunctional, typical Western American family with alcoholics and adultery and all the other stuff that a lot of families go through. And
you're American.
I had an aunt and an uncle who became born-again Christians. They became overzealous to convert everyone, and they were completely uninvited to everything. And so as a young child, I made a decision, that's bad. Stay away from that thing that those people are talking about. What are they talking about? Jesus Christ? Stay away from that thing. Because that's how you lose family. And the more experiences that I've had, the more mystical, unexplainable, undefinable, ineffable experiences, tangible at the same time, things that you can't convince me I didn't have. It was right there. I had a profound Christ awakening in 2008. One day I'll tell it on your podcast. I call it the Jesus burrito story. So I was in the middle of a Mexican restaurant, took one bite of a delicious chicken burrito and zero alcohol, not even a margarita, which I usually have with a burrito, but this time it was just water. And I suddenly had a profound Christ awakening. Had my wife take me home, and it unfolded for the next 2.5 hours. And I've never been the same ever since that moment. And so it opened my eyes to the result of that experience. Was what ultimately happened to me was I realized that I had to tune into, become aware of, and tune my instrument to what I now call the father frequency. I didn't know that I was about to have 2 boys. I didn't know that because I was raised by a single mom with a father who was never there, that I had a real deep father wound. I didn't know that that deep father wound would have caused me to make the same mistakes that my father made. That it's a beautiful man. We became really good friends when I was in my late teens. And he has such deep remorse, regret for not being there. But I think I would have been cursed to echoing dad's moves in life. And I probably would have been that dad all over again, with a bunch of regret and children out there that I don't really know. And, as I get older, like my dad has, he's just become very, very sad that he wasn't more responsible. And he's talked about how selfish he was as a young man. This is a man, of course, that was raised by a father who never once in his entire life uttered the words, "I love you." And so again, we have a father deficit on this planet. And if we can just step it up in that realm, things will improve in 20 years.
That's our job.
Yeah, it's a big one. But you're right on the money, Robert, because my metaphor for it is this: is the rooms that the 3 of us are in right now are filled with frequencies. Punch in a number on the keypad of your phone, and you will pick up a frequency that is aligned with someone's phone number, and it will connect you to that person. And so there's this infinite intelligence that informs all of nature. I see what we're going through on planet Earth right now, as a war against nature. Nature is so brilliant and so resilient that if we can damage our natural immune system.
That's what transhumanism is.
Exactly.
That is a false religion. That's a war on nature. Absolutely.
It is absolutely a war on nature, because I mean, it baffles me still to this day, and I'm surprised more people aren't baffled by it, to think that this creation that brought us here also provided all the food and medicine that grows from the ground. And a lot of it is in primary colors, and it looks just like the organ that it is meant for. That's mind-blowing, but we take it for granted. It's almost as if that force said, one day you're going to lose your way, children, so I'm going to make them look like Legos in primary colors, and the shape of a bell pepper with 4 chambers and a heart, and the avocado looks like a womb, and the little walnut with 2 hemispheres looks like a mini brain. That's for your brain. Crack open carrot, it looks like an iris of an eye, and it happens to be good for your eye.
I was going to say carrot looks like rods and cones.
In case you lose your way, I want to make it very simple for you to return to the gifts that I gave you, that everything is provided for you right there. Robert, you said something at the very beginning of this podcast about life is meant to be simple, and it is absolutely true. And life was made to be simple. We complicated it by adhering to all of these new ideologies and allowing them to disconnect us from this broadcast of nature, this infinite intelligence that I've become okay with using a word that I wasn't okay with for many years, and that is, I'll call it God now. I'm in between the worlds of the far left and the far right. I'll still get Christians mad at me sometimes. I say, listen, I've learned to pray to Christ. So you can call me Christian if you want to. But I also won't negate anyone else's God. I've traveled the world, and I've seen really good people in the depths of the jungles, at the top of the Andes, and they have a different God. I'm not going to tell them that their God is invalid. What matters to me is that they're listening to that God, and they're in tune to it, and they understand that there's a greater power than themselves. I think one of the most destructive ideologies we can adapt to is that we are the top of the food chain. Yeah. When we understand that we are insignificant and incredibly, infinitely powerful all at the same time, but that there is something that will always be more intelligent than us, that we have the ability to tune into, to tap in that keypad and to receive it. We are the body, but the downside of this, Robert talked about fame. I've been around fame my whole life. I've watched friends in Hollywood get off the bus from Iowa, sweetest, good-hearted people ever. Within 1 year, they've changed. They're destroyed by fame. One way to not allow that to happen is to never forget the principle that we are broadcasters and receivers. We are instruments, and we are being played, but I don't mean the negative way. We are not the music comes through us. We are not the intelligence comes through us. It's just like the radio of your car. Imagine the little radio of your car taking responsibility for all the music that comes through it. Like, man, I'm the Beatles. I'm Elvis.
Jimi Hendrix, baby.
I'm all of it, man. No, it's
Great
just
metaphor.
receiving and broadcasting. And when we can understand and be left in gratitude for this intelligence, that for some reason our instrument has been tuned through all the experiences, the good and the bad of our life, to be able to tune into a frequency that allows for certain information to come through it. And that certain information resonates with other people. If we're just left feeling grateful for our instrument, and not that we're owning the accolades and owning the music and owning the intelligence, but literally like just grateful that the body is receiving and broadcasting. For me personally, that keeps me away from the dangers of latching onto the accolades that I receive, the comments that I hear about me. And when I do a book signing and there's one person after the next saying thank you and we love you or whatever, I receive that because it's generous to be able to receive that love, and you have to, take that in. You have to acknowledge it. But inside, my internal work is sending it to where it belongs and just saying, now I say thank you. Whatever you want to name that force, thank you so much for allowing that to come through in a way that it just touched that person's life and made their life better. How grateful am I that I get to be in service to this incredible intelligence that governs all of life. And if we have been severed from that relationship,
which allows you to be profoundly humble.
And that has not always been my strength, trust me. And so it's taken a lot of work to understand the importance and power and urgency of humility. And that is my work, continue to this day, to continue. My prayer that I pray is, before I do any podcast, is please give me humor and humility. So I understand how important those two things are.
The Jesus burrito. I was going to say, there's the good and the bad, but there's also I'd say the humor and the humility. I mean, going to private, I'm the opposite of you, Mickey. I went to private Catholic school my whole life, kneel and, you're a bad person because, whatever. But, going into, college, it was science and atheism was hip, and it's all just matter and energy and whatever. And I never believed in any of it. And I thought I had it all figured out, cells and biology and chandeliers and chandelier cells and dendrites and axons and glutamate and whatever. And I got it figured out. And, my brother took his life on April 15th, 2014. On April 14th, I was visiting my girlfriend, and I remember she fell asleep, or her ex-girlfriend, but head on my chest. And she woke me up because she woke up. And I asked her, I was like, why'd you wake me up? And she was like, well, your heartbeat woke me up, which I'd never had because it was so bad. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, it was like pounding in my head. Like, are you all right? And I was like, I was having an anxiety attack of my dream. And she was like, what was the dream? And I was like, I was like a drone almost following over like a third person shoulder. I was watching my brother, and he was just like wandering around his house, and he was like walking up and down the stairs. He was like walking to his desk and walking away. And he finally went into his gun safe and, retrieved his gun. And I was like, I just woke up in a cold terror. And I was 600 miles away from him. And I'll just, for family privacy, I won't go into it. I found out that at the exact same, literally like proven by like text messages and, fingerprints, and cops have to be involved. They have to find out whether or not there's foul play. It was exactly what happened.
Wow.
And I'm the atheist of atheists. I just got into medical school. I'm fucking smart as shit. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, it wasn't like it was a hint or a vague feeling. It was like to the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the NSA was involved, they'd be like, yeah, you're implicated.
Yeah.
And there's the humility to tie into the humor. When I was, doing the podcast early on, I just remember asking, I was like, man, like if there is a God, can't being a cocky asshole. As if I didn't learn my lesson from my brother killing himself. I was like, man, if there is a God, I was like, I need to see an angel. I need to see an angel. I'm expecting to see some Gabriel guy with the trumpet. And the guy I ended up interviewing and him telling me about the importance of, finding God after all of it was Charlie Duke. He's one of 4 men alive who's walked on the moon. He's telling me the importance of, you can achieve everything you've ever wanted, but once you walk on the moon, there's really nothing else to do. And you come back, and the only thing better, I think his quote was, the only thing better than walking on the moon was walking with Christ. And it wasn't until months later that it dawned on me. I'm like, I'm looking for some guy with long blonde hair and a trumpet. He's one of 4 men alive on the planet who like came from the heavens. And I was just like, that's Charlie Duke. He's an angel. It's a literal angel. And so like the humor and humility, I think there is something very important to that. Like the lesson will come one way or the other. Do you want the medicine or do you want the sugar?
Yeah.
And it will come to you. And it's not, to my awareness, what the Jesus burrito story is, but I guess kind of along those like same lines. It's something absurd. So that's my
well
story.
said. Well said, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But we've been going for about an hour and a half, so I figure we wrap this one up.
Okay.
Sounds great, and it's been a pleasure. And Robert, as I said, it's great to see you, friend. It's been a while, and I was really appreciated hearing what you just said about the mystical experiences, because a lot of scientists that I've spoken with get very stuck because if they can't measure it under a microscope, it doesn't exist.
Can't be real.
That's the essence of modern scientism.
It is. So it's just lovely to hear somebody of your education.
Jill has a great metaphor for all of this that she uses to reconcile spiritual and technical, physical, and it's the infinite expanding universe. Okay, there is no proof that the infinite expanding universe is in fact infinite and expanding. It's another, commonly held storyline that we have been repeatedly told to the point where we accept it as truth, but it can't be demonstrated. It cannot be definitively demonstrated that the universe is infinite and that will always be expanding. It's infinitely expanding. It is something that is taken on faith. And it is the core of physics. And physics is the core of this discipline that we call science. And so her point is that the whole thing is basically grounded on a belief system. No matter which belief system you choose, you can choose science and scientism as your belief system, or you can say that you can come to terms with there being phenomena that you cannot readily identify because you don't have the knowledge, the detection systems or whatever. And I resolve it by the observation that our brains are such that we don't directly perceive data. We have incoming information, whether we're doing it through a test of some kind, or we're doing it through our own observation, through our senses. The information comes into our senses, and then we compare it to a model that we have of what is reality in our brain. And this gets back to your comments about hypnosis. If the data are inconsistent with our own model of reality, we reject the data.
Yeah.
And so there, by definition, we have a form of willful blindness about the true nature of reality. We cannot directly perceive it. And there's a derivative of this idea that human beings have evolved to only detect those signals that have an adaptive value for us. So we don't detect things, for instance, bee purple, just to take a trivial thing. We don't detect ultraviolet. I don't know why not. But I guess for bees, it's adaptive, and moths and butterflies, but not for humans. Otherwise, we would have the appropriate receptors in the back of our eyeballs. So that's just a trivial example. We are evolved to detect a certain range of information that is adaptive for us historically, and to reject that part of the information that's around us in the environment that isn't adaptive because perhaps it would be overwhelming. And I think to your point, Mikki, and I'm absolutely on sync with you about what is it that we as a species have to achieve to move to the next level. And it has to be, I believe strongly, that it has to be the ability to tap into these, whatever it is that ties us together as humanity, and to exchange and reinforce with each other based on that kind of collective knowledge, wisdom, awareness, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think our challenge as a species is to somehow get to the point where we're routinely tapping into that. I don't know how we get there. It's the problem that we face is how do we move towards a new reality that we've never experienced before, something that we have no model for, something we don't have an internal model of, this is the way things should be or could be. And we're like children.
That's probably one of the most important explorations that you are presenting right now. I'll try to give what in 3 minutes here, because I have to go meet my wife at the bank. She just texted me, reminding me I have to meet her. That might help. This is what's helped me understand exactly what you're exploring right there. The possibility of this. Do we really invent anything on this planet? Do humans really invent anything? Or do we receive an outpicturing almost in the same way that an architect might have a vision for a building, and then they draw it out, and then they make a blueprint, and they make a mini model, then they build the building? Are these inventions that sometimes are channeled through certain human bodies on the planet, are they an outpicturing to help us understand as a blueprint our system, the human system, better? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It'll make sense in a moment. When we first received our personal computers, they were limited to only what the factory had put on the hard drive. And that's very similar to how a lot of people have been living for the past few generations. Whatever grandpa said, whatever dad said, that's truth. Whatever pastor said, that's truth. Whatever professor said, that's truth. Nothing else exists. And they can't go beyond that because that is what is installed on their hard drive. Then we created this thing called the World Wide Web. And now a little simple computer becomes a supercomputer. You plug it in and it has access to infinite intelligence. I personally believe that we invented that to better understand what we are capable of in these bodies, these computers, where we are now being charged with the privilege, the honor of learning how to go online, so that we literally tap into an intelligence that's far beyond what was given to us on our little hard drive installed in the factory.
Oh.
We now have the ability to receive infinite information from beyond. That is why I said I believe this is the thing that will actually save humanity, when we start to receive that information, which I will tell you through various experiences, which I won't get into on this podcast, but I've had a lot of different experiences in jungles and on mountaintops and all of that, where people are involved in ceremonies. You can guess what that might be, where people end up with the same unified experience.
Yeah.
There's no variation, really. They all tap into something and realize we are one. Everything is divine. My life unfolded perfectly. Everything's in order. I now know, I remember what I came here to do. This is the very common experience people have when they have some form of a psychedelic experience or a near-death experience. And if we take all the different modalities that allow humans to go beyond the busy mind and reconnect with the deepest and the highest truth, we always come out with that memory of we are connected. We are, everything is interconnected.
Okay, so now you're really hitting it. So I mentioned that I spent some time talking to a couple of people sitting on a decaying concrete bench on the Italian coast, And we talked about many things aligned with what you were just speaking about. And the comment was made, Robert, what you experienced was the death of the ego.
Right.
And that is a desirable outcome of those types of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You have to allow your ego to die in order to be open to receiving that kind of information. That's pretty profound.
100% true.
Let's
100% true.
We'll let Mikki go. We'll excuse me, Dr. Willis go. And
I'm going to explain that to your listeners too, who weren't privy to the pre-conversation before we went live.
you don't need to explain your doctor.
I'm not a doctor.
He's a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
I don't want a new false narrative out there. People
neurosurgeon from Johns
challenging me, saying that I'm
Hopkins.
drifting as a doctor.
I grant you a PhD in philosophy.
He operated on.
Now you can call me doctor. Go
He
for
operated on me. We were in a cheap motel. I woke up in a
This
bathtub
started simply
and
by the humility of Dr. Malone saying, "You don't have to call me doctor. Call me Robert." And I said, "You can call me doctor." So that's how it started.
No, he is a doctor. The joke is lost on me. You're a doctor. It makes that I'm not laughing.
Okay, so let's the worst thing that could possibly happen to Mikki is for his wife to be pissed off at him because he missed the appointment at the bank.
We just have this beautiful conversation, and Mikki walks out of the sun. He's like, "What a loving universe," and his wife's like, and it's
she drives away with her bags back.
Yeah. Mikki's like never talking to me again. So we'll wrap this up. I could go forever. I love talking to you both.
Well, I'll jump off. I just want to say thank you both so much. This has been nice sharing space with you both.
Guys, let's wrap this up. Please go into the description. Please go watch the movie. Please go follow Dr. Malone. Please go follow Dr. Willis on Rumble. That link is in there as well. You can't follow me anywhere, and yeah, whatever. I don't care.
I don't want anyone to follow me.
Looking forward to Pandemic.
I just want to link up and connect with people. Don't follow me, please.
Yeah, if you guys want to go see Dr. Willis's practice, you can go follow his Rumble. Guys, till next time. Thank you so much, Mikki Willis, Dr.
God
Robert
bless
Malone.
the both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Guys, thank you for watching. Take care, everybody.